Sup Shredders, my name is Logan, aka Spiderhands, and welcome to an SP Reacts, where today we have ourselves a track from an act named Yoni, if I'm not mistaken, titled God's Plan. And if we switch over to here, we have ourselves a track on YouTube. We're going to listen through it from start till finish, and we're going to hear what we think. Let's do it, let's go. What have we got? Oh, those country hip-hop stylings.
Temptation's just the devil testing reaching. Kept my Bible closed, try to walk the narrow line. Till you stepped out in them tight jeans, looking like a sin so fine. Friday night lights, your hips swaying to the band. One glance and I'm praying for the strength to take your hand. You leaned in close, whispered something wicked low. And Lord have mercy, girl, my whole damn halo broke. I ain't no saint.
Nice change to the falsetto there. The 808s are kind of dominant though.
Tailgate down under that big old southern moon. Your nails digging scratches like a love song out of tune. Fingers sliding up your thigh, find a heaven right between. You moan my name like a prayer nobody's ever seen. Used to think love was wrong, something to confess. But riding you slow feels like it closer to bliss. Your breath hits your fast back, arching off the steel. Girl, you're the redemption that makes a grown man kneel. I ain't worthy of
Nice use of repeaters.
you give it free, but every thought you take pulls the devil out of me. This ain't coincidence, darling, this is God's plan. Two sinners crashing like fire in the promised land. Your skin on mine, sweating in the midnight heat. Legs wrapped around me tight while our heart beats me. We ain't holding back, no shame in what we crave. Taking every inch slow, like we're dancing on his grave. Yeah, the heavens opened up and dropped you in my hands. This love we're fucking tonight. It's God's plan. Come on and like we might wake up guilty, tangled in the sheets. World will judge, but right now it's just you and me. Your lips on my neck, begging deeper, don't you stop. Feels like paradise found on this tailgate. This ain't coincidence, darling, this is God's plan. Pulling us together, making women and men. Your body screaming loud.
Those guitar pick parts are a bit sharp.
Making broken sinners feel like we were born to live. We ain't slowing down till the sunrise goes our name. This love we're fucking tonight. It's God's plan. It's God's plan.
Okay, so that was God's Plan. Overall, there's a lot to appreciate. We're going to talk about it more in the conclusion. Because welcome to the conclusion of my review of this track from an act named Yoni titled God's Plan. In this section, I'm going to be providing an overall song analysis from the lyrics and vocals all the way through the sort of studio production, as well as any applicable constructive critique, and then finally, my general thoughts from a listener's perspective. But first of all, what do we think this track is about? I think clearly it's God's plan for them to have sex. I think that's effectively what it comes down to. This is what they're discussing throughout, the physical attraction, the interactions they have physically. Yeah, I can't go into it, I suppose. I'm just, you never know when there's kids watching, but basically Yeah, that's effectively it. And I think that the way that it's sung by the vocalist in this, it's got a kind of smoothness to it. That makes sense, especially that modern kind of country hip hop kind of infused kind of 808s, drums, wistful lead guitar lines, a bit of lo-fi sort of like mixed in there. I think it's just we're very comfortable in a hidden chest voice. Melodies harmonize neatly with the surrounding elements. There we have nice use of harmonies and falsetto and occasional break bits. We have very different vocal melodies per section, and we have use of repeaters on the sides there as well as in the center for a bit of call and response there. So there's a lot of interesting stuff going on with the mic there, and I feel that typically we kind of communicate in a way that I think at least would be representative of the style that we'd expect from the genre in regard to what we're discussing here. You don't want to be too sort of like extra with it, but enough to make it sort of relatively convincing in the grand scheme of things. The track itself at 3 minutes 56 is just within that 2 to 4 minute sweet spot, where if it's usually if it's over 4 minutes, for example, you might need to sort of like be careful of how much you repeat things in order for things not to be overplayed, whereas if it's under 2 minutes, you might not sort of develop stuff sufficiently in order to sort of flesh out the track and give enough context. There's a variety of different verse, choruses, and interludes there with outro sections and some instrumental breaks as well. There's sort of seamless transfers between parts. There's enough going on there with some sub leads, for example, some of those little bendy bits on the lead guitars or the clean strings there outside of the vocals, whether it's a call or response or just independent for there to be enough variety. And it's very easy to follow along with. We adjust our instrumental layering as well as we go through in a way where the structuring is compelling. We have some violining at the start where the volume part of the guitar goes from 0 to 100, going there, which is nice and atmospheric. We have some reverb tails and sort of like very cozy chorus effects there to kind of make it seem a bit more kind of like comfy and caring. We have a sharp tone to the guitar, which I'm not necessarily a massive fan of. There were some parts near the end where it kind of clicked a little bit when we were picking notes, but aside from that, it's totally fine there. Some of those sort of bluesy stylings that we had were kind of like sensual and made sense considering the risque nature of some of the stuff we're discussing. I like the extensions on those guitar chords as well. I think harmonically just adds a bit of sort of like jazziness to it, a bit of sort of like emotional sort of like complexity to it, I suppose, even though we're fairly straightforward with. Maybe we're expressing doubt about it being God's plan, but just kind of resolving ourselves to it at the end. There's some interesting pads in that break section around the 50-second mark. And it is a nice sort of like counterpoint to, again, to those 808s there, sort of representing the bass line, obviously by proxy being 808s, but also being a nice ground floor for everything else to sort of harmonize or resonate on top of. The drums with a mixture of cymbals, clicks, and kicks permeate the track, not all the time, but most of it. And sometimes, we get things taken away to allow things to float, but they've got a great sense of groove with the quarters, eighths, and sixteenths. But it's just nice allowing the guitars and the bass in that sort of bridge section there just to sort of be by themselves to allow a sense of sort of compositional dynamic range. The chorus is relatively compressed. There is a kind of weird kind of crashiness to the crash, which is a bit extra for me personally, but I do kind of like the sizzle nonetheless, and maybe elicits a feeling of the kind of sizzle between the people involved. But yeah, no, when we have the kind of speed rapping, because there's rapping as well, it's not just sung vocals, there's rapping in those chorus parts there. You have these synth pads, which are just a nice mid-range resonance there to sort of build up the piece and add more heft to it in the big parts, quote unquote. Yeah, there's this underlying sizzle to a lot of parts of this track, which kind of sounds like things are pushed a little bit. I don't mind the bass or sub-bass resonance in the frequency spectrum there because we want it to be nice and heavy. It'd sound pretty thick on stereo systems, like sound huge on car stereo systems. But ultimately, I think there's enough going on with the variety of different arpeggiated and lead guitar parts there alongside the drums when they're there to represent a groove and a push forward with like a halftime feel, taking things nice and slow. The bass nice and formidable, the keys and everything else on top there bring us in harmonizing neatly with the vocals. Things so nicely connected. There's chemistry between the elements. They kind of feed off each other or play nicely harmonically. Thematically, there's like a kind of a extended bluesy kind of minor feel to it there. So we're just kind of trying to be like cool, sad, I suppose, but it's more like a sleepy kind of vibe though. I don't think we're actually unhappy about the situation. It's more sort of moody is what I would kind of go for with the overall feel of this piece thematically. We maybe have some changes in chord progressions at certain parts to illustrate a different flow, but ultimately I just think it's meant to sort of sound sleepy, like nighttime, with what's described in here. It totally makes sense. and it's kind of a wistful kind of impression of God's plan, I suppose. But things seem well connected compositionally and from a songwriting perspective, and I don't think there's a note out of place. The studio recording, mixing, and mastering, overall pretty happy with it. I like how the different guitar, bass, a drum, and vocal parts come together. You know, they go together well within the stereo field. Like, think the vocals go side for side, for example. The music envelops you in the headphones. Things are niche in the frequency spectrum. There are some resonant frequencies like in the low end there, and there's like a little bit of kind of sounds to some parts in like the 1 to 4 that are like a little bit sharp occasionally. And then the guitar plucked part there is a little bit sharp and on that sort of like middle 8 part near the end. But aside from that, most of the time things are leveled well. There is not really production-based dynamic range to this. I think a lot of it is sort of compositional, which is totally fine. We have that kind of rise in near the end there to kind of whoosh us out of it, and that's fine. You know the track's ended at that point. It's not trying to sort of overdo things. Nice and loud. There's pumping because of the kicks. That's fine. Bus compression limiting is handled. Overall, you know, I'm happy with it. I don't think there's any real applicable constructive critique aside from some of the freaksy response parts I mentioned there. There's a lot of interesting ideas going on there from the vocals and how the instruments interact with it. I don't really think you could have put more in here without it becoming a bit too extra, but too overcomplicated. From a general listener's perspective, my final thoughts on it, I think that it's good to hear this from Yoni. And if this is what they wanted to communicate, that's solid. I would be interested to hear how they proceed from this point with future tracks. Are we going to get more related to this, or is this sort of more a celebration of recent sort of experience that we had? I'm not quite sure how to interpret it, but regardless, I wish him all the best of luck in future. Thank you for watching my review of this track from Yoni, titled God's Plan. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please go show him some love via the various social medias and the YouTube page, and stay cool and stay safe, and please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time, as it either help more than ever thought crazy stuff going on in the world. And I will catch you in the next SP Reacts. Spiderhands out.